Good morning. Good evening. Good afternoon. And remember, context is everything. Media Network. Ambient Classroom, episode 63, where I read this textbook from this cover to that one. Cover to cover. We're about 300 pages in. 300 in of 1,000. So that's what we're doing, but context is everything, right? Context is everything, Media Network. That means that the textbook page that I read last time, the textbook section, probably would help to have some context about what it was about so we can read today and understand. The idea of context is to have a base ground understanding of what we're about to talk about. That's what context is. An understanding of the surrounding information around a subject, the subject being today's reading, the context being Friday's reading. Chapter 12.2 was Friday, and it was titled Ancient Kingdoms of West Africa. Trade of valuable natural resources was a profound mover of society in Africa. Timbuktu stood at one end of trade network that reached north to Cairo and then across the Mediterranean Sea to Italy. Between 800 and 1600 AD, several powerful kingdoms in turn won control of the prosperous Sahara trade routes. Among the richest of these West African states were Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Trading gold and salt. Gold and salt dominated Sahara trade. Gold was plentiful in the present-day Ghana region, Ghana, Nigeria, and Senegal regions. Gold dust was sifted into hollow feather quills for safe travel to markets in North Africa and Europe. So they would hide the gold dust that they would harvest into the hollow inside of a feather so that in shipping it wasn't bricks of gold that could easily be stolen. It was hidden in feathers. In return for gold, West Africans received salt. That's right. That's what the textbook says. People need salt in their diets to prevent dehydration, especially in hot tropical areas. The Sahara had an abundance of salt. A block of salt was easily worth its weight in gold at this time. That's what the textbook says. How bizarre is that? Ghana, or land of gold. By 800 AD, the ruler of Soninke people had united many farming villages to create a kingdom of Ghana, located at the broad V made by the Niger and Senegal rivers. From there, the king controlled gold slate trade routes across West Africa. The capital of Ghana was Kumbi Saleh, made up of two separate walled towns. The first town was dominated by royal palaces, surrounded by complex domed buildings. To the people, the king was a semi-divine figure who dispensed justice and kept order. In the second town of Kumbi Saleh, prosperous Muslim merchants from the north of the Sahara lived in luxurious stone buildings. So it was more residential, I suppose. Wealthy. Over time, Ghana was swallowed up by a rising new power, the West African Kingdom of Mali, M-A-L-I. By 1235, Sundiata crushed his enemies. This is a guy. Sundiata crushed his enemies, won control of the gold trade routes, and founded the Empire of Mali. The greatest Mali empire was Mansa Musa, who came to the throne in 1312. He expanded Mali's borders westward to the Atlantic Ocean and pushed northward to conquer many cities. Mansa Musa presided over very safe cities and converted to Islam. His justice system was based off of the Quran, but he allowed women to not wear their veils in public, and he allowed them to also leave their homes unattended. They could leave their houses, which is, I suppose, I'm kind of just taking this out of the textbook because that's what I'm doing. These are notes out of the textbook. I believe in Sharia law, when you really get down to the nitty-gritty, women are supposed to wear veils all the time and only show their eyes, and that they're not allowed out of the house without their husband's company. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that that's what it is, and that's why they mentioned here that Mansa Musa allowed women to not wear veils in public and also allowed them out of their homes unattended. I'm making an assumption. I understand. Whatever. By the 1400s, Timbuktu became the leading center of learning in Mali Kingdom and drew some of the best scholars from all over the Muslim world. I could be wrong about what I said about the Muslim women. If I'm wrong, leave a comment in the comments below. A win-win. Leave a comment in the comments below, please. I will look at it, and I will give it a thumbs up, and I'll respond accordingly. And accordingly may be just a thumbs up. A new emperor of Songhai. Songhai grew up in the bend of the Niger River in present-day Niger and Burkina Faso. Between 1464 and 1492, the soldier king Soni Ali used his powerful arm to forge the largest state that had ever existed in West Africa, bringing trade routes to the wealthy cities like Timbuktu under his control. The next emperor, Askia Muhammad, set up a Muslim dynasty and further expanded the territory and improved government by setting up a bureaucracy with separate departments for farming, the army, and treasury. Songhai prospered until 1586, when disputes over succession led to civil war. Soon after the start of the civil wars, the ruler of Morocco sent his armies south to seize the West African gold mines. The invaders used gunpowder weapons and defeated the disunited forces of Songhai. Other kingdoms of West Africa from 500 to 1500 AD. Walled city-states of Hausa. By the 1300s, the Hausa had built a number of clay-walled cities. Kano, Kano, was the most powerful Hausa city-state. Its walls were 14 miles in circumference, and they protected a population more than 30,000. Many Hausa rulers were women, such as Amina of Zaria. In the 1500s, Amina of Zaria conquered Kano. That could be the name of a movie. Amina of Zaria, conquers Kano. Conquers Kano. Forest Kingdom of Benin. The forest people carved out farming villages and traded pepper, ivory, and later slaves to their neighbors in the savannah. In the 1300s, Benin organized their kingdom building off of the achievements of earlier forest cultures. An Oba, or king, was both a political and religious leader. Still, much power was spread among the other figures, including the Queen Mother and the Council of Hereditary Chiefs. The Oba's palace was decorated with elaborate brass plaques and sculptures. Benin sculptors developed their own unique style for representing the human face and form in their bronze and brass styles. Okay, so that was Friday's reading in 10-minute synopsis. Now, today's reading in a roughly 20-minute reading. Thank you for joining me here on Context is Everything Media Network. Next time, I'm going to read an article from the newspaper. That'll be a different episode in a different series, a new series that I will start at some point, maybe even immediately after filming this. Okay. Chapter 12, Section 3. Trade routes of East Africa. Setting the scene. According to Ethiopian tradition, the first emperor of Ethiopia was the son of the Israelite king Solomon and Makkedah, the queen of Sheba. The ancient chronicle describes how Makkedah decided to journey to Jerusalem after hearing of Solomon's wisdom. Learning is better than treasures or silver and gold, she said. The queen spent 6 months at Solomon's court, gathering knowledge to bring back to her people. According to the chronicle, when Makkedah was about to return to Sheba, Solomon gave her a ring and a blessing. May the peace of God be with thee. While I was sleeping, I had a vision. The sun, which before my eyes was shining upon Israel, moved away. It went and soared above Ethiopia. It remained there. Who knows but that thy country may be blessed because of thee? Above all, keep the truth which I have brought thee, and worship God. Glory of the kings. I think that was Solomon giving a blessing to his future wife, Makkedah, Ethiopian. First emperor, son of Israelite king Solomon and Makkedah. The subsequent East African kingdom of Ethiopia was proud of its ancient Jewish roots and Christian traditions of Byzantine origin. In later centuries, other kingdoms across Africa were becoming part of the Islamic world, but Ethiopia remained Christian through its Coptic church. Coptic Christian, I've heard of that. Axum, we talked about them a few days ago. Axum and its successors. Axum, A-X-U-M. About 350 A.D., as you will recall, King Ezana of Axum conquered and absorbed the ancient Nile kingdom of Nubia. Located to the southeast of Nubia, Axum extended from the mountains of present-day Ethiopia to the sun-bleached shores of the Red Sea. The people of Axum were descended from African farmers and from traders who brought Jewish religious traditions through Arabia. This merging of cultures introduced another region to Axum. It also gave rise to a unique written and spoken language, Ge'ez, G-E-E-Z. Ge'ez, Ge'ez. I don't know. How do you pronounce it? You tell me in the comments below. How do you pronounce G-E-E-Z? Please spell in phonetic spelling. Thank you. A trade network. The kingdom of Axum profited from strategic locations of its two main cities, the port of Adulis on the Red Sea and the upland capital city of Axum. From about 200 BC to 400 AD, Axum commanded a triangular trade network that connected Africa and India by way of the Arabian Sea and the Mediterranean world. From the interior of Africa, traders brought ivory, animal hides, rhinoceros horns, and gold from the markets of Axum. Goods from farther south along the African coast came to the harbor of Adulis. There, too, markets offered iron, spices, precious stones, and cotton cloth from India and other lands beyond the Indian Ocean. Ships bore these goods up to the Red Sea, where they collected linen, cloth, brass, copper, iron tools, wine, and olive oil from Europe and countries along the Mediterranean. How do you make olive oil? Do you just press olives? How do you make olive oil? Do you just press the olives like grapes make wine? Step on them? The spread of Christianity. In these great centers of international trade, Greek, Egyptian, Arab, and Jewish merchants mingled with traders from Africa, India, and other regions. As elsewhere, ideas spread along with goods. In the 300s, Axum's great king, Ezana, converted to Christianity. As the new religion took hold among the people, Christian churches replaced older temples. At first, Christianity strengthened the ties of Axum, North Africa, and the Mediterranean world. Axum's other African neighbors, however, were not Christian. In the late 600s, Islam began spreading across Africa. Many African rulers embraced this new faith, creating strong cultural ties across much of the continent. Axum was now isolated from its own trade network, by distance from Europe, and by region from many former trading partners. Civil war and economic decline combined to weaken Axum, and the kingdom slowly declined. Ethiopia and Christian outpost. Ethiopia, a Christian outpost. Through Axum's political and economic power, though Axum's political and economic power faded, its cultural and religious influence did not vanish. This legacy survived among the people of this interior upland in what today is Ethiopia. Protected by rugged mountains, descendants of the Axumites were able to maintain their independence for centuries. Their success was due in part to unifying power of Coptic Christian faith, which gave a unique sense of identity and helped establish a culture distinct from its neighboring peoples. During the reign of King Lalibela, Lalibela, in the early 1200s, Christian monks built a number of remarkable churches. They were carved into the solid rock of mountains. According to Ethiopian chronicles, the builders had divine help. Angels joined the workers, the quarrymen, the stone cutters, and the laborers. The angels worked with them day by day themselves at night. The men doubted whether the angels were doing this work because they could not see them. But Lalibela knew, because the angels who understood this virtue did not hide from him. The Ethiopian royal chronicles about how angels helped them build churches into mountains. Despite their isolation, Ethiopian Christians kept ties with the Holy Land. Some made pilgrimages to Jerusalem. Ethiopians also were in touch with Christian communities in Egypt. Still, Ethiopians saw their country as a Christian outpost. Over time, Ethiopian Christians absorbed many local customs. They adapted traditional East African drum music and dances that are still used in their church today. The kings of Ethiopia claimed descendants from the Israelite king Solomon and queen of Sheba. This belief was recorded in an ancient Ethiopian book called Glory of the Kings, and reinforced by observing Jewish holidays and dietary laws. One group of Ethiopians practiced Judaism rather than Christianity. These Ethiopian Jews, known as the Falasha, survived in the mountains of Ethiopia until recent years, when they were evacuated to Israel during a famine. New heading. East African city-states. That's what this whole section is about. It's about East Africa. So apparently Ethiopia's in East Africa. While Axum declined, a string of commercial cities, including Kilwa, Mogadishu, Mombasa, and Sofala, gradually rose along the East African coast. Since ancient times, Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, and Indian traders had visited this coast. Under the protection of local African rulers, Arab and Persian merchants set up a Muslim community beginning in the 600 ADs. Later, Bantu-speaking peoples migrated into this region and adopted Islam. Port cities, as well as offshore islands like Lamu and Zanzibar, were ideally located for trade in Asia. As a result, Asian traders, immigrants from as far away as Indonesia, soon added to a rich cultural mix. Remember, trade and conquest are major ways that cultures spread, especially in the ancient world. Growth of trade. Early mariners detected the annual monsoon winds, which could carry sailing vessels northeast to India in the summer and back to Africa in the winter. On the East African coast, many rulers saw the advantages of encouraging trade. Ivory, leopard skins, iron, copper, pearls, and gold. Ivory, leopard skins, iron, copper, gold, pearls came from the interior of Africa as well as from the coastal regions. From India, Southeast Asia, and China came cotton, cloth, silk, spices, porcelain, china, glassware, and swords. A thriving slave trade also developed. Vessels from Arabia, Persia, and China might be docked near African cities. Trade helped local rulers build a strong city-state. A Muslim visitor described Kilwa as one of the most beautiful and well-constructed towns in the world. Its royal palace stands on the cliffs that today overlook the modern city. The complex of courtyards and large rooms runs from 2 acres. Built of coral and cut stone, the structure is evidence of the city's splendor. Built of coral. You can get a cut if you touch that coral. It's sharp as a blade. A blend of cultures. International trade created a rich and varied mix of cultures in East African city-states. Bantu-speaking Africans, Arabs, and other Middle Easterners mingled in the streets with people from Southeast Asia, India, and China. With the spread of Islam, Middle Eastern influences grew stronger. Marriages between African women and non-African Muslim men furthered the spread of Muslim culture. An African wife's traditional property rights allowed her husband to settle and own land, creating opportunities for these non-African men. Their children often gained positions of leadership. Both private houses and palaces show strong Arab and Middle Eastern influence, and East African cities. Additionally, the blend of cultures gave rise to new languages, known as Swahili, and it fused Arabic words into Bantu base and was written in Arabic script. Didn't know that. Great Zimbabwe. New heading. Great Zimbabwe. To the south of and inland from the coastal city-states, massive stone ruins sprawled across rocky hilltops near a great bend in the Limpopo River. The looming walls, great palace, and cone-shaped towers testify that these structures were part of a powerful and prosperous capital of a great inland empire. Today, these impressive ruins are known as the Great Zimbabwe, which means great stone buildings. Europeans who came upon these ruins in the 1800s thought they were the work of ancient Phoenicians. In fact, the builders were successors of Bantu-speaking people who settled in this region between 900 and 1500. The newcomers brought improved farming skills, iron, and mining methods. On the relatively fertile land, they produced enough food to support a growing population. I don't know what I'm looking at. I believe these are ruins of Zimbabwe. Let me show you here. So you can look it up on the internet too if you want. You can look it up with more details. You can look it up on the internet if you want. But here's a picture from the book. Great Zimbabwe. Yep. Swahili, a mix of Bantu and Arabic. Didn't know that. Economy and government, rather. We know little about how this civilization developed. Early settlers raised cattle. They built stone enclosures to protect their livestock. In time, they improved their building method and erected large walled palaces. The capital probably reached its height about 1300. By then, it had tapped nearby gold resources, created profitable commercial links with coastal cities like Sofala. Archaeologists have found beads from India and porcelain from China, showing that Great Zimbabwe was part of a trade network that reached across the Indian Ocean. Besides controlling trade, Zimbabwe was a center of manufacturing. Artisans turned gold and copper into beautiful jewelry and made iron tools for everyday use. Weaving cotton into cloth seemed to have been an important craft. Very little is known about the government of Great Zimbabwe. Some scholars have suggested, however, that the ruler was a god king who presided over a large court. He may have shared authority with a powerful queen mother, as well as 9 queens, each of whom had her own court. Below the king, a central bureaucracy may have ruled an inner ring of provinces, while appointed governors had authority in more distant villages. 9 queens. That's a lot of queens. I think it was at one time. 9 queens at one time. Decline. By 1500, Zimbabwe was in decline. Some scholars suggest that over-farming had exhausted the soil. In addition, civil war and dwindling trade probably contributed to the breakup of Zimbabwe. By then, Portuguese traders were pushing inland to find the source of gold that they were able to buy in cities along the coast. They failed to discover the gold, and their intrusion helped undermine later small states that formed in that region. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. But, as always, context is everything. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.